and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, the podcast where we rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy, Only Fools and Horses. I'm Heather, and I'm joined from Denver, Colorado by my co-host and sister, Jenny. Say hello, dude.
Hello.
So today we are discussing Series 3, Episode 6, Wanted. So grab some exotic tobacco and a saucer of milk, and let's get started.
This episode aired on the BBC at 8:30 p.m. on Thursday, December 15th, 1983. Normal BBC schedule, it followed Wildlife on 1 and finished right before the 9 o'clock news. We're smashing down the record again this week. 11.2 million tuned in for Wanted. It's getting higher each week, it seems. Let's see, we have an on this day in the UK. Roald Dahl married his second wife on this day. At Brixton Town Hall in South London. So the number one movie at the UK box office was still Trading Places, and the UK number one song this week was still Only You by the Flying Pickets. So I'm pretty sure this song is going to be Christmas number one. A few little interesting episode facts. This episode sets a record for the most of our main side characters being in an episode together. We get Boise, Trigger, and Mickey Pierce, as well as the start of some of our pub banter scenes, which make us think of future episodes. Blossom was real. John Sullivan had a friend who got into his car early one morning and drove away, only to find that a woman in the back seat had spent the night sleeping there. Her nickname was Blossom, and she had been found to be struggling mentally. The accusation part of the story was apparently fictional. Blossom was played by actress Tony Palmer, who was reunited with Nick Lyndhurst in Goodnight Sweetheart all the way forward in time in 1998. This episode could be used to explore some currently relevant issues in society, such as the Me Too movement, cancel culture, and the idea of false accusations. We see an overall decent and well-intentioned character of Rodney here get sucked into the fear that he may be accused of something terrible when he had genuinely just wanted to help. And finally, the tank room was a very intricate set. And the wind sound effects added and filtered light coming through the slanted wall sections, as well as a rusted, riveted tank, all came from John Sullivan's previous job as a plumber, which helped him to have great knowledge of tower block tank rooms, and he knew this would be a great place for Rodney to hide out. So as usual, I have a little more trivia to scatter throughout the episode, but shall we move on to our episode rankings?
Yes, let's do that. So our regular listeners will know by now that each week we reveal and compare our rankings for the episode, and prior to recording the entire podcast, we independently ranked all 64 episodes. So if you didn't already know all that, and you are not yet one of our regular punters, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast. And we release a new episode every Saturday. So let's talk about the rankings that you gave Wanted. What was your ranking out of 64 for this episode?
My ranking for this episode is number 50.
That is low.
Yep.
Wow. I feel like you've already given that number out to another.
No, I have not.
All of yours seem to be in the 40s and 50s.
I've got a spreadsheet right here in front of me that tells me otherwise.
All right. Okay then.
It's true that not many of the earlier episodes crept up for me higher than 30. And that's just because I'm probably more of a later episode person, but that's okay. Ashes to Ashes was my number 24. That's been my highest so far, apart from Friday the 14th, which was my number 12.
Okay,
yeah.
So why did you rank this one as 50?
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel like this episode, and I think a lot of people agree, it's one of those ones that sometimes falls into people's, they don't like it because Del is not being nice, not in a fun way. It's too mean. Some people even mention this episode when they're on like a royal flush rant. They're like, well, what about what he did in Wanted? It's true. And I have a little bit more about why I think Del was like this, like later in my notes. But yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not ripping apart the character of Del. I just always feel uncomfortable when things get a little bit too mean. And I think Rodney's genuinely upset. And I think this is one of those episodes for me that I didn't put on because I didn't feel is as happy enough for me, although it does have some scenes in it that I really love, like I really love the beginning of the pub, hanging out with Boise and Trigger at the pub scenes and stuff. But apart from that, what about you? What's your ranking for this one?
Okay, my ranking for this one is 35.
That's quite high for you.
I think that this episode hits differently now as an adult. Admittedly, watching it back in preparation for the podcast, I did feel differently about it than I did when I was doing my rankings. I think if I were to re-rank this one, it probably would be a little bit lower. Probably not as low as yours, but it would be a little bit lower than I've currently put it. I have very fond memories of this episode from when I was younger, because I love all of the peck and pouncer stuff. I really love, the practical joker side of Del's character. I think I like a lot as well. And obviously I didn't really think about what effect this would have on Rodney when I was younger, as I do now. And obviously I'm a lot more aware of these kinds of issues now than I was when I was younger. So I think I don't see the funny side as much now as I did when I was a kid. And I was ranking this before I rewatched everything. So that's probably why mine is 35.
Yeah, that seems fair enough. Well, interestingly, in this case, IMDb is like my ranking. It's 52. So
yeah,
this
makes
is
sense.
Yeah, it's not really an audience favorite. And like I say, I've seen people mention online that they are very uncomfortable with Del's behavior in this episode as well. So
well, also, I mean, in this sort of social climate, let's say, as well, these issues are not considered something you should make fun of anymore, I guess, which is, again, sign of the times. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we do the episode breakdown, but yeah,
right.
It just makes sense that, I mean, this episode was probably seen very differently when it aired compared to what it is seen as now.
Definitely, yeah, because I mean, you're talking about two issues which are quite sensitive now. One is the the false accusations, or maybe the inappropriateness of him touching her, but then also they write it all off by just saying, oh, she's mad, she's mental.
Yeah.
Which is also another sensitive subject. So yeah, you are basically, it's all kind of, touchy, I guess. And some people nowadays would definitely lower their rankings for that based on that. Again, it's good that you ranked it based with your just memories of watching it when you were a kid. Because that's how I did it too. And like mine fell low because, like I said, this episode made me uncomfortable as a kid, but for not for the reason maybe it should have, but just because I don't like it when Rodney's upset. So
yeah, I mean, that makes sense that was the reason that you didn't like it when you were a kid. So okay, that's interesting.
Okay, shall we go ahead and start the episode breakdown? La, 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 la,
la, la, la. Okay, so we begin in the Nag's Head, and we've got Mickey and Rodney are talking about these two twins that they can see in the corner that they are clearly thinking of approaching and chatting up. And I wonder how big the Nag's Head is, because from what I know from later episodes, I'm thinking specifically of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I feel like the girls would have heard this whole conversation. The pub is not that big that they can be like really far off in the distance. Anyway, that's just the thought I had when I was watching that part. And it's nice to see Mickey and Rodney are friends again after healthy competition, because presumably they would never speak again. But actually, Rodney is a sucker for punishment with his friendship with Mickey Pierce. So Mickey tells Rodney to say something to the girls because it's easy. And then Rodney, quite rightly, turns it around on Mickey and tells him to go and say something instead, which Mickey replies, "What?" It's always easy to tell someone else what to do than do it yourself. I think everybody knows that. So we get a really funny bit here where Mickey shouts, "Oi!" which Rodney chastises him for, but it actually seems to work because eventually the girls do turn around. But it's funny when Rodney says,
"Of course I look, someone just shouted oi at him."
Again, we just get a little bit more insight into how Rodney and Mickey's friendship works. But again, it seems to change quite a lot because Rodney and Mickey seem very equal here, whereas I'm just thinking of like watching the girls go by. Mickey's kind of a bully in that episode to Rodney. It's a bit of a weird friendship. So unfortunately, we don't get to see the boys in action with the twins because Del enters and is immediately offensive. He ruins everything.
Who you two after? Oh, not the gruesome twosome, eh? Wait, girls, seen much of Cinderella since the wedding? I won't hang about because I don't want to spoil your chances.
He's already ruined their chances. I think this happens again later on in another bit. I can't think off the top of my head. Can you, dude, when he does this again?
I don't know, but he always does this, doesn't he? He comes in and then, like, in literally 20 seconds will ruin everything and then leave, like a breeze just coming through. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So Rodney decides there's no point anymore, and he says to Mickey,
"I'll see you Tuesday then."
And he leaves the Nag's Head on his own. Any notes on that scene, dude?
I didn't really have any. I just wrote the script says at the beginning that the pub is crowded with teenagers and Del types. I thought that was a funny thing to put because I tried to look around and see, but you don't really see much. I mean, there are people in the pub. I wouldn't have said they're all Del types, but
I was going to say, actually, from the angle that we get this whole scene from where we're just focusing on Mickey and Rodney at the bar, we actually don't really see anybody else. I think it's only when Del walks in and the camera sort of switches to a different angle where we see a couple of people in the background.
Yeah.
But actually we don't get any indication that the whole pub is not shown at any point in that first sequence. So
yeah, and then a note just to go off of what you said about the angle with the way that Mickey and Rodney are looking. Obviously, yeah, this is like shot in front of the live studio audience, and there are no sisters, right? So like it's a little bit weird to me, and I know that's like how they did a lot of the shots in the earlier days, that they do always have them looking over and like pulling all these faces and doing the body language and staring at the table. In reality, if you saw two guys doing that, you'd be pretty freaked out.
Yes.
So, like, it's obviously all just done like that they're playing to the audience. They're not playing to this table. So, yeah, the girls would have been able to hear them, and the girls probably would have been like, what the hell? Especially if Mickey was like, oi!
Yeah, exactly. Although that is very funny.
But yeah, that's the reason. Because, like, if you see, like, weird kind of, I mean, they're very strange to see, aren't they? Like, the pub scenes into Hull and Back, or cover that, when it's all shot in a room, like an actual pub bar, without the laugh track and without the live audience. Yeah, you can't really hear anything in a pub that's going on at another table unless they're being very loud. But the way they do the set of the Nag's Head, yes, there's like barely any space between people, and there's no actual pub noise. So
no, there's no background noise. Yeah, of course they can't do it because it would be, well, they couldn't do it live anyway. They could have added it afterwards, but they can't do it live because it would interrupt the the dialogue. So now we go to Rodney walking down the road outside. And it's nighttime, street lights on. So he's walking home and he's whistling and half singing something. And I asked, what is it?
It says in the script for the episode what the song that Blossom is singing is, but I didn't write it down for some reason.
I think Blossom's song is easier to get because at least she sings lyrics. Rodney, you can't really make out any lyrics. He's kind of, the whistling is more prominent for Rodney, but he is, I said, half singing something. So if any of the punters know what song Rodney is trying to sing, please let us know, because I don't know. Yeah, so he comes across a clearly drunk woman sitting on a wall who is also singing.
Take me. Love you. I didn't want to do it.
He asks her if she's all right and if he can get her a cab, which is a very nice thing to do. And she says,
nah, there'll be a bus along in a minute, my lovely.
Which is important for later. And Rodney tries to be a good Samaritan, and he decides to help her stand up because she tries to get up on her own and she's clearly very drunk. But at which point he touches her arm and the woman begins to say things and accuse Rodney of things. And I guess the thing that's a bit strange, about watching this back now, again, as an adult, seeing it very differently, it's crazy to me that, her shouting rape gets such a prominent laugh from the audience. But yeah, again, it's difficult to see. I need to try and remember what I thought of this episode when I was younger and I watched it rather than what I think now, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said this is a very serious subject matter from both sides of the situation, be it the sexual assault side or being falsely accused. And I just put poor Rodney trying to help, but he probably shouldn't have lied about being a doctor. That's my main take on that part of the episode. Mm-hmm. What about you, dude? Any thoughts on that bit?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I thought is obviously, he seems like until he says he's a doctor, he genuinely just seems completely innocent. And it's when he starts lying, that's when it could start to be taken out of context. Although nobody was around to hear it. She's drunk. She's not going to remember. What should he have done in this case? I mean, it's before the day of mobile phones. So is he going to leave her on his own while he goes off and gets help? Is he going to try to escort her somewhere? I'm not quite sure what he should have done, but what he did wasn't the right thing. Honest. But
I mean, a lot of people would say he shouldn't have stopped in the first place. But then, we saw someone that looked, she looks in a right state.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to help her and offer to get her a cab.
Exactly. And that's why we're having why there's always these kinds of issues where there's a lot of what should you have done? But nobody has the right answer in this case. If I was alone and I mean, obviously in this case, they're saying that the Blossom is a mental patient or something and she's just let out on her own, which again, I don't really understand, but she's in a vulnerable position. Had that not been Rodney, something terrible could have happened to her. And I don't really know exactly what he was supposed to do, but he looks like a child again while he's trying to figure it out and he's all scared and he's like, bloody hell, worried that she's screaming. Running away probably wasn't the worst.
Yeah, I agree.
But it wasn't the worst thing he could have done because staying around, maybe somebody calls the cops, he probably would have been arrested. Who knows?
Totally. And again, I think this is where this is a very heavy topic, so I'll only touch on it now, but this is where the fact that everything is under CCTV these days could have helped someone in Rodney's situation.
Yeah.
Because you could have very clearly seen that nothing happened. Obviously, in those days, no CCTV. But I know some people feel very strongly about the amount of CCTV that covers everything. But in this situation, it would have helped Rodney, yes.
Yeah, and the only note I wrote on this scene is that I do feel really sorry for Rodney, and I think despite a lot of the very mean things that Rodney and Del sometimes say about women, anytime you see a woman in a vulnerable position, you see that Rodney and Del are actually very protective and kind when they look after women. You know,
absolutely. I mean, whenever Del is accused, it just reminded me of the line in A Miracle of Peckham when Albert sort of implies that Del's going to rip off the sick and the elderly.
You listen to me, Albert. I am not the sort of bloke who cheats on the sick and the elderly.
As you say, he's a good guy. I can't remember which episode he said he goes around and helps make sure all the old people have got enough to eat and drink in the winter and stuff on the estate. I mean, they're good guys, lovable rogues.
Yeah, and let's say Rodney and Del had been walking home together. They probably could have maybe arm in arm helped Blossom somewhere. I don't know, but
yeah, or one of them could have gone to get a cab, and the other one waited or nearby her and just kept an eye on her from a distance. You know, if not stand near her. But it's a very difficult one because if I was sitting alone on a wall and I was a bit drunk and a guy approached me, regardless of his intentions, I'd think something bad was going to happen.
Yeah. Unless you were completely out of it like she was, or maybe in those days maybe people weren't as worried, but horrible things used to happen back then too. It's not like that's a modern thing.
It wasn't reported on as much because we didn't have social media and we weren't all aware of everything that happens every single second of every single day.
Right.
We cut to the flat the next morning and Grandad is serving up some disgusting food for Del to eat. Del sits down all excited and then he has a look at it and he says,
"It's like a bad day at the Blue Cross."
And I just thought, why on earth did Del and Rodney let Grandad cook for them still? I mean, I know that it's one of his pleasures in life, they say in the Christmas Crackers episode, but that's referring to the Christmas dinner. Surely at this point, them asking Grandad for any kind of food, this is what they'd expect to get.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because they also like eating at Sid's and they insult the food.
Yeah, true. Maybe it's just one of those things. Maybe they'd secretly like it. But this does look pretty awful, what he gives Del here. Grandad mentions that
when Rodney came in, he was behaving very strangely. He was all trembling and sweating.
Nah, he's probably right, don't worry. It's just the start of the mating season.
Again, we see the dynamic between Grandad and Del and how they treat Rodney differently. We've seen examples of this before, but Grandad is always a lot more concerned about Rodney than Del is, especially when he notices any little thing that might be wrong. And Del is a bit more dismissive. Grandad gives Rodney the breakfast instead of Del because he didn't want it. And Rodney doesn't say anything about it at all. So if Rodney was in being his normal self, he probably would have been like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, I'll have this instead," but he doesn't. So we can clearly see that Rodney is, very on edge and he clearly hasn't slept well. The bags under his eyes are huge. Del questions him about last night. And again, he's very jumpy when he says,
"What did you do when you left the pub last night?"
What makes you think I did something?
Again, this is all very funny, to me when I was younger. I found all this very funny, the interaction here between them. So Del tells Rodney they need to go and pick up the van from the pub.
Well, when we fell out the pub last night, the whole area was teeming with the old bill. I mean, they were all there. There was the flying squad, like Alsatians, the SGB. Anyway, I thought to myself, well, there's no way I'm driving home through that lot, not with me, being soppy as a sack.
And I actually had a question. What does he refer to, saying he was soppy as a sack? Is he saying he was drunk?
Yeah, that's what I took it as.
So he would have driven if all those people weren't there, drunk.
Well, yeah, we've talked about this a couple of times, haven't we? Because there are definitely times when they walk home from the pub or they say, "Oh, I've had a drink, I can't drive." And then there are other times when they insinuate that he does drive. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit mixed up.
Yeah, I'm not, because obviously drunk driving would put them more in a bad light than their lovable characters, because that's an awful thing to do.
Yeah.
But especially if they do it regularly. But Rodney asks,
did they have a clear description of him?
Who?
The man they were after.
And then Del sort of becomes a bit more concerned, like Grandad was, that something is wrong, because Rodney is implying that he knows that there was a guy involved with all the police being there. Now, the thing that's a bit annoying here is that Del knows why the police were there.
Right.
He knows because he tells him later on. It's strange in that moment he didn't tell Rodney when he said, "They have a description of him." I know he says,
"Who said it was after a man?" He
would have surely naturally followed up with, "Oh no, it wasn't that. It was the skinheads." So it's a bit, obviously for the story to continue, he can't tell Rodney what it was about because he has to use it later. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that he wouldn't have said it right away because he did know what it was and it wasn't about a man. So then we get Rodney telling the story about what happened.
My journey home last night weren't as uneventful as I made out. There was this woman. She wasn't feeling very well, see? I don't know what was wrong with her, but she stunk of booze. I stopped, right, to ask if she wanted any assistance, and she started acting all sort of odd. Screaming. Shouting things.
What kind of things?
Things like, rape.
And I would love to know what modern audiences, younger people, would make of this episode's subject matter. We've already discussed this. You said this already when you were talking about why you ranked it. And the IMDb rating probably reflects this as well. But yeah, I think this episode would just hit very differently if someone was to start watching Only Fools and Horses now, especially a younger person who probably has been, hearing about these issues a lot more prominently their entire lives than we would have when we were growing up.
Yeah, you definitely it'd have to be one of those episodes that you watch knowing the time it was from and not take it too seriously. You could say that about a lot of the episodes or a lot of the comments or a lot of the, the behaviors, but still, yeah, there are lots of young people that watch Only Fools and Horses now and love it. And I think it's fine. I just think you just have to know kind of what you're watching and know the way comedy was written differently and this sort of thing was more of a joke. Obviously, it's never a joke to somebody who is affected by something.
Yeah.
But that's just, you have to know like your own trigger points, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, it's different.
I mean, I've got to say, it's so interesting because Grandad and Del's reactions when Rodney's telling the story are very funny.
Yeah.
Like their facial expressions and everything, it gets a lot of laughs from the audience. And the way Rodney tells the story is very matter of fact and almost sweet in tone. It's like, then this happened and then this. Like, it's almost like he's talking about an afternoon tea that he had. So that's also very interesting. It's not told with the gravity that it probably would be if it were to be done today. But obviously it also wouldn't be a comedy probably if it was done today. So initially, Del and Grandad are very concerned until Rodney begins describing the woman.
Well, she was blonde, 45. Her hair had black roots and purple fingernails, and she was really heavily made up.
And Del suddenly changes his demeanour. We can see David Jason's face looking at the camera, and he's got his back to Rodney while he's describing this, getting a cigar out of the tin. And Del is already suspicious that this is not a problem, like Rodney thinks it's a problem. And then he says,
"Did she call you my lovely?"
So now we get what is, I believe, the first of a continually used joke with Del having his back to Rodney and showing the audience that he's laughing while portraying another emotion to Rodney. I know it happens in Heroes and Villains. Is that what you think of Del Boy?
Yeah.
Shallow as a...
worm's grave, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Shallow as a worm's grave. But I just wondered if any of the punters might be able to think of another moment that happens, because I feel like it definitely happens more than these two times.
Yeah, I can't think of another one off the top of my head. But yes, it's a done thing, isn't it? Which works very well when you're performing to a live audience.
Oh, yeah. And David Jason's so good at sort of, keeping his body still and showing all his emotion on his face is exactly what you need to do for this joke to work. And he does that so well.
Yeah.
So Del is finding this all absolutely hilarious when Rodney says,
"Blossom."
While Rodney is freaking out and apologising, Del suddenly changes his emotions and he turns to Rodney saying,
"You expect me to believe that?"
And here Del sort of takes it upon himself to turn into almost a barrister in court. And he pulls apart Rodney's story, acting like that's what's going to happen if he goes to court. But there are some great one-liners here, most noticeably,
"The case of the Peckham Pouncer,"
which again is a very funny delivery. And I love that Del just comes up with the name, like it gives Rodney like a name, a criminal name in the moment. Like comes up, it's just, it's very Del, it's very funny. And obviously the name he chose is quite funny as well. Grandad unknowingly backs up Del's take on events because he thinks Del's being serious. He doesn't realise that Del obviously knows that this is nothing actually. And then Del really lays it on thick, saying,
"Well, last night there were mobs of vigilantes roaming the streets and they were shouting things like, 'Lynch him, lynch him.'"
And this is where I wrote, I actually feel really sorry for Rodney here.
Yeah.
Because even Rodney starts talking about what he would be called in prison, and he says he'd be called the Beast.
Yeah.
And he says,
"There'd be razors in me soap. There'd be broken glass in me porridge."
Oh, you'll soon learn to adapt, Rod.
Which, of course, Grandad always there to lighten the mood with his wonderful one-liners. But then when Rodney stands up and he says...
No, it's not fair, Del. I swear to God, I didn't touch her. I was only trying to help.
That line is heartbreaking. Like, he sounds like he's about to burst into tears, you know?
Yeah.
Which you would be in this situation. I mean, I can't think of much worse things to happen to you as a man than being falsely accused of something like this.
Yeah.
Because, it follows you for the rest of your life.
Well, that's the thing I would go back to what I said about the episode, like making me uncomfortable because I don't like it when I see Rodney get this upset. I think I would like go along with Del's wind-up as a funny joke until this point, and then maybe Del could have just been like, oh, I'm just kidding. Like, I don't think he needed to drag this on. I put in my notes here that Grandad says later that Del never knows when to stop, and this is the point where he should have stopped. And that's a good setup for Del's character for future episodes. It's like neither of them know where to stop, but if you think about other episodes where Del winds Rodney up, and then maybe the ones where they argue, like T for 3, and every time Del does something really stupid like this, there's a point where he could have just turned it into a joke that still would have been funny for him, but he doesn't know where to stop. So in this case, he should have stopped when he saw how upset Rodney got. There was no need to continue it.
No, I agree.
He got the reaction he wanted. Yeah.
I mean, they do change their tone after Rodney has that sort of, outburst, breakdown, whatever you want to call it, but by saying,
I believe you.
So do I, Rodney.
Like, again, Grandad is taking this completely seriously, but he's sort of taking his lead from Del. And Del, I guess, does try and make Rodney feel better there within the context of the prank by saying he believes him. But then Rodney leaves the room, at which point Grandad asks Del,
do you reckon he done it, Del?
Which, again, would be something you might think, and you wouldn't want to say in front of the person. And then Del walks over and shuts the door, and as soon as he shuts the door, he bursts into hysterical laughter. I don't think we've heard Del laugh like this before this point. This is real, like, proper, happy laughter. Very giggly. Del tells Grandad who Blossom really is. And Grandad says,
she's always accusing blokes of doing this sort of thing.
It's her hobby.
So we find out that Blossom has done this many, many times. No problem. Again, why on earth this woman would be sort of, as you said, let out on the streets if she's, mentally ill to this point where she's constantly accusing people, because, again, putting herself in danger. I mean, what if someone actually did assault her and the police wouldn't believe her?
Yeah, see, that's a good point to make, and that's like something that, if she's mentally disturbed in whatever way and not capable of taking care of herself, how do we know that these accusations are false?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of laughing at her vulnerability, and again, taking it for the time it was in. I know nobody took it seriously, but yeah, we shouldn't allow a woman who can't look after herself out onto the streets, and if she's coming back saying men are inappropriately doing stuff, how do we know they're not?
Yeah, there must be some that would, right?
Yeah, and especially if they know that she's known for it and everyone's just going to laugh it off and the police take no notice of her.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
would be almost setting her up for it, right?
Yeah, Grandad scolds Del, as you said, for not telling Rodney and for taking things too far. And Del says to Grandad,
by this time tomorrow evening, I'll have him believing that all the flats are under siege.
Del is very transparent here to Grandad about what he's planning to do here. And then we get this great story from Grandad about a time that Del played a prank on him.
What about that April Fool's Day? You told me the pools had rung to say I'd won $500,000. I mean, there was I in a Soho nightclub drinking champagne with a bird called Camilla, and I suddenly realised I didn't even do the bloody pool.
David Jason's laughter in between when Grandad's retelling the story is just brilliant. So funny. Again, I'll mention this in a later scene, but why didn't Grandad tell Rodney?
Yeah, why didn't he just tell him? I think, especially since Grandad's been the victim of Del's pranks as well, but maybe Grandad's afraid, but I don't think he should be.
Do you have any more notes on that scene?
Yeah, I got a few things. Yeah, so my first thing I wrote was Del's initial concern when he thought that somebody was just threatening Rodney or whatever the reason was that Rodney was upset is really heartwarming.
Has somebody threatened you? If they have, you tell me their name, and I'll go and sort them out before we go to the market.
And it's a shame that he couldn't use that same protective vibe to put his mind at ease when he found out what had actually happened. Although there wouldn't have been an episode, I get it. But I really love to see like Del's protective side. My next note is that Del just eats white bread with ketchup. That's just so funny. That is definitely like something I would have done as a kid, because I used to just like tomato sauce sandwiches or something.
As a kid, I'd do something like that now if that's all I had in the house.
Yeah, but it's just funny that he sits there and eats bread with ketchup. Del says that the SGB...
SGB?
Right? So I looked that up because I was like, what's the SGB? And I couldn't find anything on it except that it stands for Scaffolding Great Britain. I think he means the SPG, and it even says SGB in the script, so I'm guessing that's just a Delism, right? Because the SPG is the Special Patrol Group. And I took this directly off Wikipedia, a unit of Greater London's Metropolitan Police Service responsible for providing a centrally based mobile capacity to combat serious public disorder, crime and terrorism that could not be dealt with by local divisions. He must have meant the SPG. They were only around until 1987. There's no laugh from the audience when he said SGB, so I'm guessing that is a skipped over Delism. He meant the SPG. My next note was, how did Rodney not click when Del said, "Did she call you my lovely?" Like, that seems to me a giveaway. Big giveaway.
Because it's very specific, isn't it?
It's too specific to, I guess it could be forgiven if Rodney was really upset and stressed out, but I would have twigged straight away that, like, if this were me and you'd said that, I would have been like, oh, you know her. You're such a liar. Yeah. The last note I had was that this, I think I said it earlier, but this episode often gets lumped in conversations around Del's poor behavior with a royal flush, From Prussia with Love, like the awful things that Del has done that people attribute to his character. I mean, he's obviously very remorseful later, but I personally would put this in one of the, if we have to do like the top 5 mean things Del does, this will be up there for me. I really feel bad for Rodney.
Yes, agreed.
That's all I had for that scene.
No, I agree with you with everything you just said then. Although I do think he's worse than a royal flush, but we'll get to that later. So we cut to the Nag's Head for the next scene, and Del has clearly just finished telling Boycie and Trigger about the prank that he's playing on Rodney. They're sitting down at a table together, which again, lovely to see the three of them hanging out together as friends. I assume that this is the next day, but I could be wrong about that because of something that Grandad says in the next scene, something about, why didn't you tell him last night?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure what day it's meant to be, but let's say the next day. So Trigger says,
I thought everyone round here knew what old Blossom was like.
To be honest, I guess it is strange that Rodney wouldn't be aware of Blossom, to be honest, because it's like Rodney not knowing about Slater, but even weirder, because if this is a woman that, Del knows all about, she's accused loads of people that Rodney's aware of or Rodney knows, it does seem strange that Rodney wouldn't have at least heard something on the grapevine of, if not her name, but like a woman who always accuses guys of doing this sort of thing. It just seems like something Rodney would have heard of, or Del would have told him about before, So that's a bit of a plot hole, I guess. So Boycie voices his opinions on the mentally ill.
I don't think they should be allowed out.
Oh, yeah, why that?
Well, it might be a danger to the public.
Still selling them second-hand cars, Boycie?
Implying that Boyce's business is dodgy. So this is the first time we kind of get a hint that even though Boycie has a legitimate business, as legitimate as, more legitimate than Del's business, he is still cutting corners and doing dodgy things. And obviously we see a lot of evidence of that later on with the Prattmobile. Boycie continues talking about Blossom, saying,
every 3 months or so they take her away and plug her head into the national grid.
Yeah, but they reckon she's as sane as anyone when they've finished.
Yeah, till she gets her electric bill.
And then Del gets a call at the bar, and I said a new barmaid called Karen is introduced, but I remember you said last week that she was already introduced. I didn't notice her actually in May the Force Be With You, because she's... She's not as prominent maybe in that episode. She actually has an interaction with Del here where she gives him the phone and she says, phone call. Del finds out that it's Grandad on the phone and that Rodney has
gone on the run.
So Del doesn't take it seriously at first when Grandad says it, but then Grandad continues talking and you can see Del's entire demeanour changes on that phone call, and he clearly takes it seriously. And then he goes back over to Trig and Boycie and tells them
he's found a secret hiding place.
Where?
Which I feel like is one of the first times we get a true like Trigger reaction to something. Because Trigger is known for this in later series, but this is a very Trigger reaction. Of course he corrects himself afterwards, but that reaction is True Trigger. So Trigger seems concerned, but Boise makes a joke out of it. So here I think Del's getting a bit of a taste of his own medicine with Boise's reaction, which is well-deserved.
Grandad reckons he's taken all the tin food from the cupboard.
So what you going to do then, Del?
Dunno, Trig, I just dunno.
I ain't got nothing in the freezer then.
And that death stare, that look that Del gives Boise at the end of the scene, it goes on for a really long time. Any Scrubs fans out there, I know Jenny's going to get this reference, but it really reminded me of the death stare that the janitor does with the music.
Yeah.
So if you're a Scrubs fan, you get that reference, but if not, it's still a very good death stare. Well done, David Jason. So any notes on that scene, dude?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So calling a pub to relay a message. How old-fashioned is that? Can you imagine? Like, you're like, oh, I got to let my friend know something. I'm going to call the pub that they're at. Yeah, that would never, No,
that would never happen, no.
Yeah, just hilarious to the modern day. I do remember it being like a time when you had no phones and stuff, no mobile phone. It really jars you into the past. Yeah. This I thought was pretty interesting. The scene opens zoomed in on a sign that says no gambling.
Yes.
They are playing cards, but they could be gambling, who knows? But what's funny is that the last time we saw the three of them playing cards was in a losing streak. So I like the way that they start this scene off by basically telling the audience they're not fighting, they're just playing for fun. Like, I like that they're like sort of almost giving a hint to say, look, we've got Boise and Trigger and Del and they're friends. Like, I kind of like the way that they just do that.
Very different dynamic.
Just subtly by zooming in on that sign. Yeah. And that's it.
We go back to the flat and Del comes home looking very defeated. So we assume Del's been out all night based on what he says here. Grandad seems hopeful when he hears the door go, but then he realises that Del is alone. You can see his face drops. So Del talks about the state of London here, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, you want to see what it's like up there in the early hours, Grandad? It's like the end of the world. And it's full of drug addicts, glue sniffers, winos. Do you know I've been offered everything from 50 quid for my passport to a plate of magic mushrooms?
Del makes London sound like an absolute hellscape here. I didn't realise London was in such a state in the 1980s. Maybe someone can tell us about that.
Yeah,
how
sure.
accurate that description is. At this point, Del notices a bad smell. And Grandad and Del discuss what it could be, but they don't seem to know what it is at this point in the scene. And then Del plans to go back out and continue looking for Rodney after he's had a cup of tea. But a very funny moment in this scene. Grandad says that he's in the note. He said he'll be in the last place you'll think of looking for him. And then he opens up the cupboard and Del says,
well, he's hardly like to be in that bloody drawer, is he?
For the no. Now, don't you get funny with me, Del. This is your fault, you and your silly jokes.
Again, I ask, why didn't Grandad tell Rodney? Because Grandad actually scolds Del for not telling Rodney last night when he was listening to his music. And I'm like, so you saw Del sitting there listening to the music with Rodney all stressed and you didn't tell Rodney? Like, what?
Yeah.
But then they begin talking about the smell again and they twig that it's coming from the vent, at which point Del realises where Rodney is.
So yeah, this scene is a little bit like Big Brother, isn't it? When Del comes in and Rodney's gone and Grandad and Del discuss him being gone. And the only note I wrote for this scene is Grandad is the only adult in the room here. And sometimes maybe we forget that Del had to grow up so fast and be responsible from such a young age that this maybe led to his immature prank playing side of his adult personality.
Maybe.
Because, yeah, he didn't get to really be a kid for very long, did he? If, we're having a lot of inconsistencies with what age he had to take over the care of Rodney, but let's say it's his late teens. Can you imagine, having to, a lot of the stupid things you do in your late teens and your 20s? Del had to raise a kid, so sometimes he reverts and he's very immature and he finds things like this very funny and he finds it hard to let go of a prank. So that could possibly be an explanation for his very kind of immature attitude. But Grandad is the adult here, telling him how silly he's been. At least we feel some remorse from Del at this point.
Oh yeah, I think he knows what he's done.
Yeah.
That's why he's taking it out on Grandad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we cut to the tank room. This is the final location of the episode. I said the beginning of this scene is very eerie, and you mentioned in the intro about the lighting and everything. was very specific and,
Yeah.
and done. And it shows. I mean, it really does have an atmosphere, this room, and the drips and
It's actually,
everything.
did you think it was a set? Because I never did. I always thought it was an actual tank room.
I didn't think it was a set. No,
Yeah.
definitely not.
So it's well done.
I mean, I've never been, not that I recall, I've been in some like engineering rooms or whatever you call them, the rooms with all the pipes and the whatever. The
Engineering.
the engineering room, I'm not sure. That's my Star Trek coming out there. Big Star Trek fan, me. Not Jenny, just me. Del is talking to Rodney, even though he's not sure that Rodney's there. Rodney doesn't talk back. And then we see Rodney knock over, I put a clearly empty can, given the noise it makes when it falls on the floor, even though he said he hasn't been able to eat anything because he forgot the tin opener. And then Rodney pretends to be a cat. Meow. In his
Meow.
very, very strong accent, which Jenny made me do for the intro of this episode. To which Del replies,
Or if you prefer, I could get you a saucer of milk.
Del carries on because Rodney still doesn't give himself up. And he says, can we at least talk about it, Rodney? And then suddenly this very loud noise. I've actually never really understood what this was supposed to be.
No, I don't know. I thought it was a machine noise, or it was just Rodney making more of a clanking noise than he meant to.
Yeah, it was like it's like an entire, like, I don't know, something huge shifted and it made this huge noise. But again, I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be. And I actually, when watching this back, this is the first time I actually understood this bit, because for the longest time I always thought that was Del thinking Rodney was trying to kill himself.
Oh, no.
Because I could never make out the line, that is you, ain't it, Rodney?
Yeah, you didn't know. What did you think he said?
I just sort of went, oh, what you doing, Rodney? Like, that's what I always heard when I was a kid. So, like, I didn't know that was the line. I only really got it this time watching it back for this review. So he actually thinks it's not Rodney in the room because that noise is quite ominous. And then Rodney responds with,
No, it's that cat again.
and then we get this shot, this pretty heartbreaking shot, actually, of Rodney peeking around from behind the water tank. And he looks awful.
Yeah.
Like really messed up, disheveled, scared, just really small. And yeah, it's really sad to see Rodney like that. And then Del lets Rodney know how he knew he was in there.
The smell from your exotic tobacco has been wafting down the air ducts.
And then Rodney tells Del what he's been up to in the tank room. Not much, obviously. And we get Del saying, I'm not sure if this is the first time, but it's a recurring joke of Del's when he says something incorrectly. He mispronounces a word when he says,
I was speaking metaphorically.
That's not the first time. I'm pretty sure he's done that already, right?
No, he has definitely mispronounced words, and he's also misusing the word. It doesn't make any sense.
And then Rodney explains what he's playing at.
Well, Del, this is a little game called Not Going to Prison. The rules are ever so easy, you know. All you got to do is find yourself a place to hide and stay there till you die.
Don't reckon it'll catch on, Rodney.
Del is taking a long time here to tell Rodney the truth. He should have said, as soon as he got in that room and it was Rodney came out from behind there, I need to tell you something. I'm really sorry. I did this. He does an impression of James Cagney that I always felt fell really flat for the audience as well. Like David Jason's going full throttle with the impression. I don't know who James Cagney is, but he's really going for it with the impression, and I feel like it doesn't get much of a laugh. I always feel a bit sorry for David Jason in that moment.
I think it's because of the context of him making fun of Rodney again, and the audience is over it. But it's a good impression. I just don't think that they think that that's funny.
Yeah, that's interesting though, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, because it's very noticeably doesn't get a laugh from the audience, which is,
Kind of hits almost as if they're Rodney there, and they're like reacting the way he is, like, shut up, it's not funny, stop making fun of me.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. I thought the joke they didn't think the joke was funny, but maybe it is just, as you said, it's an empathy thing for Rodney at this point, that they just can't laugh anymore at his pain. So Rodney asks if the police have been round to question him and Grandad, and this is when Del comes clean, sort of.
Yeah.
So he tells him about Blossom, but not about the prank that he's pulled. So Del asks if Rodney would like some water with his scotch, which will become important in a minute, and he declines, which kind of made me think Rodney already twigged that Del had set him up, and maybe that's why he let Del drink the water. Because he's already knows that Blossom, isn't really a problem, and that there's been no police siege, at this point. So maybe that's why he let Del drink that water. And it's only when Rodney asks him why he told him all of the things that he did that Del says,
For a laugh.
And Rodney's reaction is actually pretty tame compared to what I think I would have done here.
Del, I haven't slept. I'm starving hungry, and I've been freezing my boots off in this tank room because of your bloody wind-up!
You take things too seriously, that's your problem.
Again, Del does seem to feel bad, but not as bad as I would want him to feel if I were Rodney. And he tells Rodney,
Look, I've been all over London looking for you.
And then we get this funny line where Rodney says that he did actually see Del leaving.
Oh, yeah.
And Del asks why he didn't say anything, and Rodney says,
Del, I'm a desperate man on the run. I can hardly lean out and go, ooh, Del.
So Del apologises again in the only way that he knows how, bribery. So he says he's going to buy Rodney a new suit, he's going to do all this stuff, and Rodney does milk it, as I would, when he says he's going to get him the new suit, and Rodney says,
Yeah, but then I'd look silly, a brand new suit and these dirty old plimsolls.
Don't you bloody come it, Rodney.
And this exchange really reminded me of the end of A Royal Flush. Because it's the similar thing. It's Del apologising and Rodney, although it's a little bit different because I don't think he tries to bribe him at the end of A Royal Flush. Not that
I think no,
remember.
and I think offering him a new suit at the end of Royal Flush wouldn't have felt like enough for what he does in Royal Flush.
God, no.
But yeah, like even though you could compare the two, because like I don't know, I guess it's too complicated to go into the whole Royal Flush storyline right now. But yeah,
Yes.
like the whole bribery thing is always the way that Del gets out of it. But then to be fair to Del is always the way that works with Rodney. So
Yes,
yeah, whatever,
true.
money or stuff, and it always appeases Rodney.
They appear to have made up until Rodney drops his revelation when Del asked him to go and have a shower, and he says,
Oh, I don't fancy standing under that water, Del. Not after what I've been doing in it.
So the episode ends on a good joke, but I still don't really feel like Del got any comeuppance for his prank. Not really, not considering how far he took it and how much pain he put Rodney in and put Rodney through.
The only note I wrote for this whole scene was, as an audience member, you feel Del's remorse for sure, but you feel worse for Rodney. So it's an interesting dynamic created by two brothers, and the way that you can be mad at their actions but also feel sorry for them at the same time. So it's really realistic in that way because they have like a lot of different depth for character.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, I agree. I mean, I think Del's main remorse was probably walking around London all night looking for Rodney, but he probably had plenty of time to think about how silly his decision was to keep this joke going. Because he still would have been able to have such a laugh at it, even if he just told him an hour later.
Yeah, you're right. I just want one other thing. I just want to point out how differently this episode, I think, would have felt if it had been in series 1 as opposed to now. Because, I mean, thank goodness by this point in series 3, we do know the characters really well.
Yeah.
And we can sort of see this side of Del's personality as not being like super cruel. I mean, this is cruel, but we can still kind of forgive Del a little bit for it because we understand his childlike side, as you mentioned earlier. Whereas I think if he'd done something like this in series 1, we would have probably hated Del off the bat. The timing of, when it happens is important.
Yeah, maybe John Sullivan. I mean, I know it's different times, so maybe he didn't take it as seriously when he wrote like this, but this storyline would not have been something he would have tackled in series 1 just because he didn't have that confidence behind him of having, the 2 series and stuff. So maybe that's a factor as well.
Okay, cool. So if there's nothing else, let's move on to our awards segment.
And guess what? He's only one.
Okay, so as always, we have 3 awards to announce this week, and we will start with Plonker of the Week.
Don't be a plonker.
So for Plonker of the Week, we will each nominate a plonker, and we will discuss and decide who wins. So, dude, who have you nominated as your plonker of the week?
Well, okay, Del is the obvious one, but again, Grandad should have told Rodney.
Yeah, but I don't think we can give it to Grandad, though. I mean, he's not really a main player in this
You never want to give it to Grandad.
I know, it's true, but
you always feel bad giving it to Grandad.
Grandad didn't make a mistake here, really. He made a decision to not tell Rodney himself somewhere along the line, and perhaps that was the wrong one, but he is not the main reason that all this went to shit. That would be Del. Del made a really stupid decision to keep this joke going. It's Del.
Nice and easy. Del is the plonker
Del
of the week.
is plonker of the week.
Realised that I took the joke too far.
Okay, so this week Heather will award Best Line of the episode, and I'm going to be doing Best Moment. So, dude, what have you chosen for your best line of the episode?
Yeah, so I have two. One of them is because of the delivery, which is the case of the peck and pouncer. I think it's probably one of the most famous lines from the episode.
Yeah.
So that's probably one reason that it sticks in my mind. But another one, which gave us both a laugh during the breakdown, is I could hardly hang out the window and say, woo, Dale. I think that line's very funny as well. So yeah, but I guess if I have to pick one, I would give it to the peck and pouncer line, just because it's the most famous line and it sort of sums up what the episode's about and everything. So yeah.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough. Okay, that can be the best line. Yeah, I had a hard time choosing best moment because
I
think most of the moments that define the episode around like the Blossom stuff could not be considered best moment of the episode.
No.
The audience like cracks up when Blossom stands up and goes rape, but I don't think that is necessarily in the view of today's society.
That's what I mean, like stuff that
can't laugh
at,
at that
the
really,
laugh track.
Yeah,
laughs at times that I would just be like, oh, she's laughing. They're laughing that she's shouting rape and Rodney's running away.
Yeah. I'm not cancelling anything. I'm just saying because
No,
within its time.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's important to mention that. Yeah, we definitely we're putting it in the context of modern audiences, but we definitely still appreciate the episode for what it was at the time.
Yeah, and I laughed at it when I was a kid.
Ranked it quite high because I liked it more when I was a kid, So
sure, yeah. I think the moment that I wrote down as best moment is when Del spits out the drink at the end, and that's only because, like you said, it does end up on a funny moment, like ends on a punchline. Del gets a little bit of a comeuppance, and also there's a lot of David Jason spitting out drinks. Kind of gags, and it just felt like Only Fools and Horses, and it felt like something Rodney would do to Del, and it brought them back together in a way, even the scoreboard a little bit. So yeah, for me, that's the best moment.
In essence, it's a spill the tea joke, isn't it?
Yeah, spilled drinks, visual comedy. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna go with that, and that would be it. And I don't even have any honorable mentions, do you?
No, I didn't even put one down to give you another one to choose from for this episode. I couldn't think of one.
We'd love to hear from the audience, because I think this is an episode that's going to be divisive, and some people love it, some people hate it, and people are going to have a lot of opinions on it. So sure, let us know what your favorite moments and favorite lines are, and then what you think of this episode in terms of rewatchability with today's modern view. And
seeing it through the eyes of someone living today and not someone living in the 80s.
Right. Yeah. But if there's nothing else, then drink up, we're leaving.
So that about wraps it up for this week. Join us next week when we'll be discussing Series 3, Episode 7, Who's a Pretty Boy? And until then... Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, you can email us at longlivehooky street podcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces. Bonjour.